Now, domain 3, security architecture and engineering. It is the largest domain in our CISSP with inclusion of a lot of new topics, a lot of new concepts, including cryptography, security architecture, and physical security. A lot of things, I mean, a lot of people in the group might have experienced in one of the other phases about cryptography or security architecture or even physical security, but not everyone is very much well versed about it, right? Now, just want to give you a brief introduction about the domain here. In this domain, we have divided this domain into 5 modules. The module 1, we are going to talk about cryptography and symmetric key algorithms. A lot about interesting things, a basic history about cryptography, what exactly cryptography is, what is all about the keys, securing the keys, and a lot of interesting stuff. So it's absolutely interesting. It's new. It's absolutely interesting. You would enjoy this. Then cryptography is of 2 types: symmetric, asymmetric. Here we are going to talk about symmetric. In next module we are going to see about PKI, which is your public key infrastructure, and cryptographic applications. What are the real-time uses of the cryptography? In module 3 we are going to cover about principles of security models, design, and capabilities. This is where we are going to talk about various security models. So there are various security models available for ensuring the security of the application. So Bella Padula, Biba, Take Grant model, Clark Wilson, a lot of security models, interesting stuff, important stuff. Okay. Then we are going to talk about security vulnerabilities, threats, and countermeasures. Okay. Here we're going to talk about a lot of stuffs about isolation, process isolation, and various security vulnerabilities. Even we are going to talk about OWASP top 10, which is an open web application security project, the top 10 vulnerabilities of the web application, various threats, and what all are the countermeasures that we can implement. In module 5 we are going to talk about physical security requirements. Now, like I said in the very beginning, CISSP doesn't talk about only about data security. It talks about everything about security, not only about information security, everything. So because people are the foremost important thing that we want to protect here, right? So that is the reason what all are the things that we need to take care in order to protect the physical security, like gates, fences, kind of fire extinguishers we have, what kind of water sprinkler system we're going to use, what kind of alarm system we're going to use. Interesting stuff. And I'm going to tell you what kind of questions you might expect. So these are the things that we're going to discuss in domain 3. All right. The first module, which was cryptography and symmetric key algorithms. Right. So we learned a little bit about encryption. Now, encryption is not something a kind of a modern technology which came in like 4 or 5 decades back. It has been in place from, like, I guess it's from one of the earliest civilizations that we had, like from Roman civilization. One of the earlier encryption that we used to have, we called it as Caesar cipher. Now, Caesar cipher was created or invented by the gentleman called Julius Caesar, right? Now, what exactly encryption is, that you take a message that you need to encrypt, right? Pass that message in an algorithm, any algorithm, right? So yesterday we took a quick example of AES 256. We can take another algorithm like Caesar cipher. Okay, and then you choose a key. I'm going to talk more about the significance of key shortly. So, but yeah, just let's understand key. A key is something which is sensitive information, right? That is used to encrypt any plain text. Okay, just understand this. Key is a secret information that is used to encrypt the plain text. When we include all these 3 things, what we get? An encrypted text or a cipher text. Okay, all right. So this is a basic fundamental of how does the encryption happens. Now, if you want to decrypt anything, you simply do the cipher text plus the same algorithm plus the key, and what you're gonna get? A plain text. All right. Now let's talk about Caesar cipher, and then you will get to know what exactly key is. Now, Caesar cipher said the earliest form of cryptography, they used to replace a character with some other character. Okay, so let's say A was replaced to the third letter in the alphabet. Okay, so we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Okay, let's take first 10, right? A will be replaced to the third letter. 1 A, I mean the after A, whatever the third letter comes here. So 1, 2, and 3. So A will become D. Okay. Similarly, B will become E, F will become C, and so on. All right. So the algorithm was Caesar cipher. This was an algorithm. What exactly is the key that we are using? Key is replacing first character with the third letter. First letter with the third letter of the English alphabet. Okay. So that is the key. Now, a person who is decrypting the message. Okay. A person who is decrypting the message, they're gonna get something like this. So this was DEF, sorry, DEF. And let's say a person who's decrypting the message, they got DEF, right? The algorithm is Caesar cipher. The key is ROT3. Now, ROT3 is rotation 3. Okay. What we have done is we have substituted the letter with the third letter in the English alphabet. Okay. That is why we called it as ROT3. And we are gonna get our plain text. So we are gonna here we are gonna do, we are just gonna do the reverse of the process. Okay. So F is gonna become C, E is gonna become B, and D is gonna become A. All right. So here we had a cipher text. We passed it through the algorithm. We used the key, same key that we used to encrypt the data. The same key was used to decrypt it. And what we got? We have got a plain text. All right. Similarly, the way we did ROT3, we can also do ROT12, where the first letter would be replaced with the 12th letter of the English alphabet. Okay. So A would become M, B would become N. All right. Caesar cipher is also called as substitution cipher. Now, what is a substitution cipher? Where a character is substituted with some other character. Okay. There are two kind of encryption we are going to do shortly. So one of them is substitution cipher. Okay. A particular character is substituted or replaced by some other character. Okay. So Caesar cipher is a kind of substitution cipher. All right. So this was just a very basic encryption that came into the picture in the early civilization of the mankind, and that's how it was done. Now, if you see that Caesar cipher is kind of vulnerable to frequency analysis. Now, what is a frequency analysis? In an English alphabet, a lot of letters that you see appears oftenly in any sentences, right? So there are few letters like A, E, I, O, and S, R, T. These are the few letters which often really appear kind of frequently, right? Oftenly it appears in any sentence whenever we want to make. Now, if a person who is trying to break into the this cryptography, okay, breaking a cryptography is this art is called as cryptanalysis. We're going to look into the terms and terminologies shortly. I'm not going to mess you up with the different jargons, but person who is trying to break the cryptography, if the person realize that a particular letter is appearing kind of frequently, they are going to try to find out a trend, right? A correlation between a cipher text and a plain text. Okay, that's how they are gonna figure out what could be the key. And once your key is broken, now this is very important from a cryptography perspective and CSSP perspective as well. If your key is compromised, if this gets compromised, the entire piece is very easy to break, right? I mean, if I'm gonna write anything, any gibberish thing, and I'm gonna tell you that this is encrypted using ROT3 or ROT12, you can easily convert it into plain text, right? Anyone can do it if they know what exactly ROT3 or ROT12 is. So it is very important that we secure the key to the best of our abilities. If your key is properly secured, we're going to talk more about key management, how to secure our keys and what are the things that we need to do. If we secure our keys properly, right, then our cryptography is secure. Otherwise, if your key is compromised, everything is messed up. All right. a little bit, if we move ahead into towards the modern history, how does the cryptography played significant roles? Okay, so towards the modern history, and it is around World War II. When World War II happened, the Germans invented Enigma codes. Now, Enigma codes were used by the German military groups in order to communicate, right? So Enigma code at that point of time, it was like 1940s, when we are talking about World War II, right? It ended in 1945. So it was around 1940s. Germans used to communicate with their officials, military officials, that where they're gonna do the next attack, or where they're gonna launch their bombs, and so such things, using Enigma codes. Enigma codes were pretty difficult to break until unless there was a great physicist and mathematician. He was a mathematician, in fact, not a physicist. A great mathematician came into the picture. His name was Alan Turing. If you want to know more about Alan Turing and a lot about encryption, this domain is going to help you when you're going to watch the movie Imitation Game. I'm not sure if you have already watched it. If you have not, I would surely recommend that. From a CISSP perspective, you can watch this movie. It's an amazing movie where the character of Alan Turing is being played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Okay, so Alan Turing, what he did, he made a machine, Turing machine. We also call it as a Turing machine. So people who are from computers background, who have done engineering in computers, they or IT, they must have read about Turing machine in their course as well. So Turing machine was helpful in breaking the Enigma codes, and with the help of Turing machine, the war was shortened. A lot of lives were saved. Okay, see how encryption has also helped in saving the lives as well. So Turing machine was used in breaking the codes. Okay, now, so once the code was broken, and they were able to understand what they are talking, so they were able to understand the next plan of actions or the next moves that the Germans are going to make. All right, so that was a little bit of the history of the encryption. Similarly to the Enigma codes, another encryption machine was made, which was called as Purple machine, and it was made by Japanese, and it was again during the World War time. All right, okay, goals of cryptography. Now, earlier I discussed briefly that the objectives that we want to protect in security or information security, it is CIA, right? When you think of security, think of confidentiality, integrity, and availability always. However, in cryptography, the goals are slightly changed. Now remember this word, pain. If you remember this word, it is going to be a lot easier to understand the cryptography. PAIN stands for privacy or confidentiality, authentication, integrity, and non-repudiation. Okay, so confidentiality is that we want to protect the confidentiality of the data at all the states, like in transit, in motion, right? Now that is why we always say that whenever we want to protect confidentiality, best thing is to encrypt the data. Authentication is to make sure that a particular entity who is trying to make a claim, authentication helps in verifying that a particular claim that has been made is right or wrong. Okay, that's what authentication is. Okay, integrity is to make sure that any data is not modified in an unauthorized manner. Okay, that is what integrity is all about. And non-repudiation is, it provides an assurance that someone who has sent a message or made any activity, right, they cannot deny that I didn't send it or I didn't made this activity. Okay, so repudiation is simply someone who can deny and you're not able to prove that a particular person did or not. Whereas non-repudiation, a person cannot deny from the occurrence of the activity. All right, so non-repudiation is majorly done in order to protect against attacks like spoofing or masquerading. Spoofing is when you steal someone else's identity, like you can spoof email ID, you can spoof the phone number, you can spoof the IP addresses as well. Okay, so if someone is able to make sure that yes, this particular thing was originated by you, you have sent it, then that particular term is called as non-repudiation. Now before I move forward, I need you all to understand, this is where we're going to talk about keys. Now what exactly is the key? A key is also called as a crypto variables. Now, why it is called a crypto variables? Because these are the variables. These are the variables as in like the key is not a constant one. It is not the same. Every time a data is encrypted, they should use a different key. All right. So a key is a variable which is used to encrypt any data. Okay. It is an essential component which is used to encrypt the data. All right. Now, what all are the various characteristics of the key? Although I have discussed in our coming slide, but I'm going to let you know right here. A key should be random in nature. It should not be predictable, right? A generation of the key should be random in nature. The example that we discussed earlier, like ROT3, was pretty simple basic, because it can only contain how many keys? 26 keys, right? Because how many letters we have? 26 letters in the English alphabet, right? And you can keep on simply rotating everything which is at the 26 times. Beyond 26, it's gonna be redundant. Okay, so that was pretty simple. Whereas the various keys which are used into multiple algorithms, they all should be random in nature, right? So a key which is generated should be random in nature, and it should be lengthier. It should be long. Longer the key, your cryptography is secure. Okay, longer your key length, the more secure your cryptography would be. Okay, these are the few characteristics of the keys. First of all, it should be random, it should be lengthier, okay, and it should be securely generated. All right. A lot about key management we're going to talk in a while, so let that hold there. So for now, let's understand the keys should be generated randomly and it should be lengthier. All right. Now, one term that we need to understand is key space. Now, what is a key space? Key space is the range of values that are valid for use as a key. Now, if I'm going to ask you that what is the key space for Caesar cipher, the answer would be 26, right? Because the only possible number of keys that we can use is 26, right? The only possible number of keys that we're going to use is 26, or probably it's 25. Reason being, if we're going to do 26, it's going to again become the same. A would become A, right? So the possible number of keys would be 25, not 26. Okay, so what was the key space for Caesar cipher? It would be 25. All right, is it understood about the what exactly is the key space? That all the possible values that could be used as a key. Okay, now a formula to identify the key space is 2 to the power n. Okay, where n is the bit size of the key. So for example, in AES 256, the key size would be 2 to the power 256. Now, what exactly this is going to tell us? These many valid keys we can use. Now imagine how much is 2 to the power 256. It's way too much. Something that we cannot use all the key spaces in our lifetime. It cannot be used. So these many possible combination of keys could be presented, right? Key length is 256 bits. So it's very long, and it is going to offer 2 to the power 256 combination. All right, and it is kind of obvious. The reason I'm gonna say that lengthier key is good. Why? The lengthier your key would be, the more random keys could be generated. Now imagine if it would be something, an algorithm like DES. DES has 58 bits of key size, right? Data encryption standard, which I'm going to discuss next. So DES is a 58-bit key size. What is going to be the key space? 2 to the power 58. Relatively, it has less number of combinations that we can use, right? So considering the current processing capability, DES could be broken in like how much time? Merely minutes, few minutes. You can easily break DES 58 just by applying even a brute force attack. All right. So that is the reason we always recommend lengthier your key, the more secure it would be. The lengthier your key would be, it is going to offer a longer key size, so that attacks like brute force attack is going to take a longer time, and the keys generated would be random. We just have to protect our keys. If our keys are protected, our encryption is going to be secure. All right. Few basic definitions of from cryptography that we need to understand before we take a quick look on types of cryptography. Okay. Kirchhoff principle. Now, what is a Kirchhoff principle? As per Kirchhoff principle, any algorithm that you use to encrypt or decrypt any plain text, in what I mean is, whenever you use any algorithm for cryptography, it is important that you make that algorithm public. Okay. Now, what would happen when you make anything public? People can use it, people can test them and identify if there are any vulnerability in the algorithm, something that is not working properly. Okay, they can tell you that this piece is not working properly, you can go ahead and fix it. The similar way we do it for the open source, right? Why do we make our code public or release our code public in public? So that people can understand and work together as a collaborative event, so that people can understand if there is some kind of a vulnerability in your code, and they can let you know, and so that you can go ahead and fix it, make it a better way, right? Now, if I made any algorithm which no one knows, right? Only I knows. I know that I have made an algorithm. I know each and every bits and pieces of the code. Now, what would happen if there is a vulnerability which I have not seen? The moment I released it, someone have identified, someone figured out, and they have broken the algorithm, right? So Kirchhoff principle says you need to make your algorithm public, but you need to keep your keys secure. You do not have to make your keys public. The moment your keys are compromised, your encryption is of no use. Your entire cryptography will be compromised. Okay. So Kirchhoff principle suggests make your algorithm public, keep your keys secure. Okay. Cryptography. What is cryptography? Cryptography is an art of converting plain text to ciphertext. Okay, that is cryptography. And again, once we have the ciphertext, we can convert it back to the plain text. So cryptography is an art of encryption and decryption. Cryptanalysis. What is cryptanalysis? It is an art of breaking the cipher. So the people who break into the cryptography, the code, right? Who identifies the keys, who identifies the plain text. If they are given the ciphertext, they're going to identify the plain text, right? So those people are called as cryptanalysts. Okay, and this particular subject is called as cryptanalysis. People or an art of breaking the cipher. Okay, what is cryptology? Cryptology is the science of cryptography and cryptanalysis. Okay, that would be cryptology. Now, what is a crypto system? Whenever you implement your cryptography on any hardware or software, those hardware or software becomes your crypto systems. Okay, so whenever you implement your cryptography methods or a mechanism in on any device or in a form of application, that particular device or application could be called as crypto systems. So you must have heard about HSM, hardware software secure module, hardware security module, that the device which is used to generate and process the cryptographic keys, or even the TPM, trusted platform module, the chip which is inside your systems. More it is available on Windows systems, right? Which is used to protect your hard drive. Okay, so those are the crypto systems. All right. Now with this, we completed domain 3 successfully.